If you got 50 cents an hour, you're lucky, or even hardly anything. I remember when I was a boy, I worked for $1 a day. Bryan Reed. I was born in Cane Hill in 1925.
And your parents?
John Hoyt Reed and Rosie Lou Spinks. When I started the school, I was living at Clyde. I didn't know too many people in Cane Hill. I remember my dad and mother brought me to the drugstore in Cane Hill to visit with Johnny Miller and Evie Miller. They was my dad's first cousin, Evie Miller. And they's pretty good people. And he run the post office for a long time. And then later, Shakers took over the post office. I never was a very good student. I always thought I was smarter than the teachers, and that didn't work very good. I can see today. But my memory was good at Cane Hill. I liked K School. I liked all the students, and still seemed like a family to me, but there's not many of them left. And my best teacher was Miss Threlkow. If it hadn't been for her, I don't think I'd ever knew anything in school. But she was one of the best. Her name was Pite before she married. She was Clay Pite's sister. I moved to Cane Hill in 1957 on the Jim Pite place. And it was as I was a young boy going to school at one of the nicest places in Cane Hill. The house was nice. They built it new. Jim Pite did. And then we had the cannon factory right down in front of my house, and it run 1 year after I was there, and then it shut down. And then later burned. They'd loaf, and the people who lived around there would go to the store every day and stay all day, play cards, pitch and stuff like that. And I was just a boy, but I remember it good. J.U. King used to be around there, and a lot of nice people. We played, what we did in Cane Hill, we played horseshoes, and we just rode horses and stuff like that. We rode a lot of horses. I remember me and Squirt Carnes, we raced horses one time from the store to the church. And of course I beat him because I'd been raised on a horse, and he hadn't been as familiar with a horse at that time as I was. Well, it was just an old rough gravel road. We didn't go nowhere. Sometimes we'd go to Martown and trade, and most time at Cane Hill and Clyde. It was good. I call it Walmart. It was like a Walmart in those days. You could buy anything from a mowing machine to a cultivator, all that stuff. You could buy that at the Clyde store.
What about in Cane Hill? What stores do you remember in Cane Hill?
Well, I remember Shaker Yates. He was the main one. This main store was across the road, and it's gone now. And then Shaker built the store that's there now, and it was real nice. I remember Shaker good. He was good to us boys that went to school, and we didn't have no bus during my day much in Cane Hill, but we did have some buses, but they wasn't very many. And we wanted to go to a ball game, why we'd have to get somebody on the outside more or less to take us in a truck or something like that. We didn't have the bus facility to take us. Didn't have the money. My granddad came from Kentucky in 1827. They didn't have no post office, no nothing. And my granddad came in here, and he brought 9 boys. Well, they brought apple trees with them, and they settled in Cane Hill, and they planted apples. And it used to be a big deal. Apples was it. I picked apples when I was a boy, picked 100 bushel, and that was pretty good. My mother picked apples. We all picked apples, and we grew apples. It's been the way of life, and we haven't let it go. And most everybody had a dryer, and they dried the apples, and there's a market for dried apples. But they was a way people liked to eat apples, can them. We didn't have the cold storages we've got today. Back in those days, they'd pick them, and there's a good market for them. It wasn't very much when I went to school there. We didn't even know it was a college. We just knew it was a schoolhouse. That's where we went. But my dad went to school there, and my grandpa went to school there. My granddad taught there. Well, it was pretty bad when the school moved out of Cane Hill. It's pretty lonesome. I'll say it about like that. It had been their school so long, and then it was gone. I was there one time, and it was operating. And my uncle run it, Uncle Arlie. He run the mill that year. And my dad had brought wheat. We'd bring wheat in there to get it made into cornbread meal. And then we brought flour and wheat to make flour. They'd make that for customers like my dad. And I went with him to get it made. Yeah, they used it a lot in the 20s. It was kind of way of life. But 30s it run some. And that's my uncle. He run it in the later years.
What years was the canning factory running?
Well, it run a long time. That was a pretty good way of life for the women. They'd peel tomatoes, and we grew tomatoes. My mother didn't work there, and I never did work there. But I helped haul tomatoes in there. That used to be a big deal, was canned tomatoes. Them and apples, hadn't been for them, I guess we'd have all starved to death. What we do for fun. Mm-hmm. we made fun out of work. Pick tomatoes, pick apples. Oh yeah, that was our main deal. During the winter, we possum hunted. We had a possum hunter. My uncle had one, and I like to go hunting, and that stayed with me till, well, it's pretty well all gone today. Yeah, we hunted, and we was big deal back then was playing horseshoes, and you was either good or you was pretty sorry. I used to bet Wallace Yates $5 I could throw a ringer out of 2 shoes, and I won quite a bit of money. If it wasn't freezing, we'd be out there pitching horseshoes in the wintertime. And they played dominoes. That was a big game. A bunch of old codgers would meet and play dominoes. Something else I did one time, I rode to Fayetteville in a wagon with my granddad. Some way or other he was going, and I wanted to go. And I went up there with him. Went up there and stayed all night. We stayed behind Lewis Ford, the bank's there now. It was hardware, Lewis Hardware. And we stayed there in the back, built a little fire. We knew how to camp out because we were raised that way. And we always took a grub box with us. And I remember that real good. I don't know whether I had a good time or a bad one, but I remember that. He was a good guy. Spinks, his name John Spinks, and everybody liked him. Well, we called it a grub box. They had food in it. They'd cook pies and cakes and everything you would eat, and there it was. Oh, I was about 4 or 5 years old. It was really quite a deal to go up there in a wagon. And we wasn't the only one. There's other people going too. And it was pretty rough to go up there. They usually go, well, once to twice a year and took care of business, like paying taxes and doing things that they couldn't do down here. like buying some parts for the machinery and stuff. And I remember I think he went to pay taxes or something. But we had a spring seat on the wagon, and I remember sitting in it. And we got there and we set up camp and stayed all night, just me and him. And other people was doing the same thing. Yeah, we just slept on the ground with a quilt. Oh, that wasn't no big deal for us. That's the way we operated. Yeah, when we hauled apples and took them to Oklahoma, we didn't rent no motel. We slept on the ground. I know when I started out in life, I got married and I didn't have no job, and I didn't even want a job. I didn't even have any idea I wanted a job. The rest of them was getting themselves with an education to try to work for maybe a guy like me, and we could make good money. We made good money. I remember one time I was making more money than anybody around because they was working for somebody else. Well, mine was selling apples to the customer. We'd knock on doors. Today it'd be kind of low grade, but then it was good. They'd be tickled to death. See you come in with a load of apples, because the apples wasn't plentiful, and they didn't grow them in Oklahoma, and they didn't have storages to buy them year round. We can buy apples the year round now, and used to you could only buy them in the fall of the year, because we lost money. We couldn't make no money at it.
When the broilers first came out?
Yeah. You was on your own, and you'd let them have a cow or two to mortgage before they could borrow money. And that was risk for us. And Johnson and Steel and Jeff D. Brown was two of the main companies back in my day, in the early days. And Dad didn't do any good. I come on and done pretty good at it myself, but it's altogether different. Well, we done a lot like they do today, only they got more modern equipment, and we had hand equipment back in my day. And we grew them up to a certain age, and then they come and picked them up. I remember one time I have done good. The first bunch I ever grew, I made enough to buy a farm. I sure did. And now you'd have to work a lifetime to pay for a farm. And I paid for one the first year I grew broilers. Well, we'd go to Lincoln usually on Saturday night or Friday and go to a movie. But we lived by the golden rule. That's what we believed in. It was the golden rule. If you can't live that, you're not very good. I was raised with common sense, and it never left me. Yeah. A lot of people, they don't know what. Well, you hear it mentioned now more than it used to, but our people has always been pretty much to work for ourselves. We never have. All of our people was pretty well self-employed.
You always have been, haven't you?
Always. I never did work for anybody. I never worked on a job in my life. I always worked for myself. There ain't a lot of secrets to it. Live pretty well your means, not live above them. Not live above your means. Oh yeah, they had a lot of secret knowing how to handle money. And that's the reason they ain't very many got any.